Hello, welcome to the Bible Standard. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and drop a comment in the comments area if you have any questions. We'll do our best to reply.
Bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. We hope to do today is focus in a little bit more on the 0 to 6 phase of raising children, and then the 7 to 12 phase, the 13 to 21 phase. Obviously, there'll just be a few minutes for each of them. And then we're going to look at 5 questions and some suggested answers. So we talked about these 3 phases at our previous class, and we talked about the importance of progressing from one to the other. It can be too slow sometimes. Sometimes we can go too fast. It depends on the children. There's a lot going on here, but each of these stages are really important. And on top of that, we really need to understand maybe the main things to focus on in these particular phases. And so we're going to come up with suggestions for you with respect to that this morning. But before we give those 3 things that we think we should focus on, we want to talk about the Christ-like characteristics that might be associated with this period of time. And we think that in the first phase, the 0 to 6, remembering all this is a continuum, that we establish the principles of love and truth from the very beginning. And followed by that, in the 7 to 12 phase, we have holiness and service. And then ultimately in 13 to 21, I wanted to say choices and trial, but those aren't really characteristics. Associated with this is really wisdom and endurance. So these might be the attributes that are focal points for these phases, and we simply build on these as we proceed through the development of our children, hoping that they will be a godly seed to God's praise, glory, and honor. So let's take a look at this first phase. This first phase is 0 to 6. It's when they're the youngest. And what are the 3 things that we need to focus on, we think, here in this phase? Well, number 1 would be authority. I'm going to read for you Ephesians 6, 1 to 3. This is where our theme verse comes from. And we read there, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth." This is directed to children. They might not even be able to read yet to get this instruction, so clearly it's up to parents to instill this instruction and to practice this in their families. This is really important. To start off with the authority, the structure, the understanding of parents and children. This isn't an age or a period where we should be negotiating. We've talked about this earlier, as if they're adults already. They need to learn, obviously in this stage, to take direction, to do what they are told. It's very, very simple. Really, I think one of the worst things is when a child disobeys, contradicts, defies, challenges their parents. And really, we cannot tolerate that. We must be really firm on this. This is one of the worst things. I mean, a child can color on the wall and do all sorts of things, but to defy a parent is a very serious thing. And so I recommend that to begin with, we ask our children to obey us, as the scriptures say, without reason, other than that this is the right thing to do. I'm the parent, you are the child, and so you should do as you are told. It really is as simple as that. And if they get that understood, obviously over time we are integrating later on in their lives an understanding of the reasons for why we're doing certain things. But to begin with, it's sufficient. You're the parent. And they should do as they're told, because you are just that, the parent, and you should be able to direct them, and they should be respecting you and doing what they're told. We should try to be very consistent with this. And I think as a note, we obviously want to not ask our children to do things that are unreasonable or that we're not willing to follow through with and make sure that they actually do. We need to be sensitive, obviously, to when they're sick or tired or maybe in a public situation, some situation that's intimidating in terms of what we ask of them. Ultimately, we do want them to be independent decision-making individuals, but at this stage right now, we want them to do as they're told, and we want them to always be respectful of their parents through their whole childhood period into their youth and their development. Now here, I'm going to give you an example going back to the 1800s. This is a long ways back. 137 years ago. It's always fun to look at the Christadelphian and just to see some of the things that they say in relation to some of these things. So here we have a quote from 1888, and this particular article is entitled something about children that get the upper hand. Upper hand children is what it was called. And AC says, there are many homes of the brethren in this sunny clime, anything but peaceful or quiet. This is not in our sunny clime, by the way. Partly through self-willed children who get the upper hand, it being too much trouble to restrain them. This is as unhappy as it is contrary to the most express injunctions, both of the Old Testament and the New. It was a rule in apostolic times that no brother was either fit for an overseer or deacon who did not rule their children and their houses well, having their children in subjection with all gravity. For as the apostle well argues, if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the ecclesia of God? There are no upper hand children where the precepts of the truth are enforced, and precepts respecting children that are not to be observed and enforced, if need be, by the use of the rod. Our precepts we might as well be without. And relevant to our section here, the right time to nip the evil is in the bud. Want to get off to a good start here for sure. So moving on then to our next matter. We also think this is really vital in this first stage. Telling the truth, truthfulness. There's a lot of situations about, who did that, who started it, what's going on here. And in those early stages, often a parent will know. And this is the time to really determine whether or not you can get the child to appreciate the need to tell the truth consistently. They can sneak, they can be deceitful, they can lie. And I've seen children of much older ages that have practiced lying. And they can look at you and tell a lie. Wow, it is quite scary to see. So in our children, it's really important to get this done early. They need to understand in the early years the importance of telling the truth. And the way I looked at it for our children was that they needed to tell the truth, and that was more important often than the mistake or the infraction itself. So important to tell the truth. They would say, look, I'm not going to spank you if you tell me the truth for what you've done, but you need to tell me the truth. That is so much more important. And sometimes punishment might be less on the basis that they have confessed and told the truth. It is so important that ultimately you build trust with your child early on and that they're going to be straight with you, because ultimately, as we said, as they get older, it gets tougher. We have this verse here in Proverbs 12:22. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. And we can't be deceived as parents. Younger kids might tell the truth, but older kids are going to be challenged when sometimes the situation is very difficult, and they might be tempted to not come out with the truth, to try to hide it, to get around it somehow, some way, because it just feels like it's the wrong thing to do for their well-being. So again, really important here to not have rose-colored glasses, to understand human nature, to understand, the challenges for a child to do that as they develop. It gets harder and harder for them, but if this can be instilled as something that's really, really important, then you're going to be off to a good start, because at least you're dealing with the realities related to whatever else is going on. Number 3, we think it's sharing. And certainly this is tied to the bigger picture of love. The kids are just getting so much love from us to begin with, right? They're loved and in an affectionate way through hugging and care, and we're looking after them, and they're a focus of our lives, and we're just pouring out for them. And they're experiencing love, which is really quite incredible as parents devote so much to them. And of course, they don't appreciate that or understand it, but they are experiencing a lot of love in the home. This is the place for them to first now start to practice something related to love. And I think it's sharing and caring. And that really is maybe the first battlefield to start curbing human nature. We talked about the toy that the child wants as their own and doesn't want to share. And of course, this is the place, especially if you've got children of the similar age, you're going to experience it in the home all the time. And it might be many iterations of this to try to instill this more caring, sharing attitude in the child. If you only have one child or there's big gaps in the ages, then maybe this is going to come out in other family, social, ecclesial, or educational settings. But it's really important for kids to start learning to share and to care and ultimately to include others. And kids can be really, cruel in this respect, and they need to learn to be kind and considerate, to be nice, to practice all of this wonderful character that we know in 1 Corinthians 13. And so, as parents, we're obviously very sensitive to children who might be the odd man, or shall we say the odd kid out on a regular basis. It's going to happen from time to time, but we don't want to see that on a regular basis, and that's certainly where supervision comes in, and then we can be teaching and instructing these wonderful scriptural principles in those situations. So here we have in this phase, we think, a lot of love they're getting, a start on learning about love, and of course the core principle of truth, at least at this stage, telling the truth. So we move on then to the next phase, the 7 to 12 phase, and here we think it's now very important to talk about, again, these things that we've talked about, holiness and service, and the first thing we want to focus on is separation. And the reason for this is they've been learning about inclusivity, and now they're going to learn about exclusivity. They don't need to learn those big words, but the principle now, especially if they're going into public school, is that, okay, you got to choose your friends wisely. And they now have to have some strength within themselves to, step aside from people who are going in the wrong direction. And even if the kids are not going to public school, they're going to find opportunities for this amidst Christadelphian, all the various circumstances that they're in. You still can't follow your friends off to do the wrong thing. And you're looking now for that strength where they can step aside and be separate and do the right thing. We all know it as peer pressure, and it's a tough thing. And this is the early stages of the kids developing conscience and being able to stand up to do the right thing. Look, all of our experiences are very varied. It might be in an ecclesia that all the friends are great and they're all good influence, and you have less of this. We're not looking to have differences within our ecclesia in terms of stepping apart from one family or others, but Sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes in an ecclesia or in an area, you've got different standards and different situations such that you do need to even practice that there. You want to teach, again, doing the right thing. We have to balance that inclusivity with also exclusivity. 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals, and children are very much impacted by their friends. And so we're hoping the friends can be a good influence, and that our children can be a good influence on other friends, and that there can be a homogeneous situation here for sure. Now, the next one we say is Bible study. And some would say, wow, that's a little early here. We're talking 7 to 12. We want to get at Bible study. Well, obviously, we're talking about reading the Bible. This now becomes just that much more important, and that happens on a daily basis or attending ecclesial functions. But we would add in the element that through here we can start building into Bible study and have Bible study one step at a time. They got their own Bible books. They've got their own Bible. They might be doing some coloring. They might be making pictures or underlining. They might be now doing some concordance work, looking at a word, looking at cross-references. There might be a family study night. All of these things to build up a love of the Scriptures and to hope that this is going to take effect, that they're going to now independently desire to have that half hour. Hopefully that time will even grow. Maybe it's on Saturday morning to do some things in the Word. The example we give you, we won't read it or look it up, 1 Samuel 1:24 to 28 is that of Samuel. And we read of him that when Hannah had weaned him, he was taken to the house of the Lord, and he was young. And we think there's a really good pattern there. He was brought to Eli, and there he was set about the worship of the Lord. He was lent to the Lord, and he worshiped there as a young boy. And so it's never too young, and it's step by step, and we should keep progressing in this because obviously the Word of God is something we want to take hold in their lives, ultimately independently. And we're looking for that to be developed through these small, fun, positive ways in which they can engage in the Word. I'm sure that an example of that was yesterday and all the activities that everyone enjoyed there. And we move on to the next one, service. And here we have the ecclesia noted here, because now children need to start to learn to meaningfully help others. They got to help around the house. They've got to do things. It's not like it just starts as soon as you turn 7, of course, but this is now a real focus. They can actually be meaningfully helpful and serving, and they can learn to ultimately participate in the ecclesia. Now I'm going to go back to 1888 one more time here. I'm not going to put the quote on the screen, but again, for your pleasure, consider this principle in relation to what they said back then. The same person, AC, I have heard of an aged grandfather having to polish his grandchildren's boots on Sunday morning. Instead of the big children being trained to wait on themselves and give the helping hand to an overtaxed mother. This is a mistake of the age, an age in which overindulgent parents think they can improve upon the sterner principles of their ancestors and even of the Bible itself. Bible precepts require children to reverence their parents, to rise up before the hoary head, and to honor the face of the old man. Any method that secures the indulgence of children at the expense of these principles is to be reprobated as being as hurtful to true daughterhood and true sonship as it is degrading to the divinely founded parental institution. So, grandfathers should not have to clean the boots of their children or grandchildren. They need to learn to participate and help out and pull their weight around the house. It's interesting that, we're talking about the mistake of the age, and this is back in the late 1800s in reference to the previous period of time that was stricter. An interesting perspective through looking back in time. This is where children can really learn that the ecclesia is first. It's a priority. We go to the ecclesial things and we participate with the ecclesia, but we're also helping. And all those things that we do to help and to get involved with the ecclesia are really, really important for children. Look, I think there's a wealth of activities where the young people, even if we go into greater ages, can go out and hear the word of God. There's a lot of places where we're sitting and learning, and those are to be valued. We have to have them in balance, though, with actually serving and doing the things of the truth. And sometimes we can miss out on the importance of the actual doing of all of these things, the work days, the just pitching in to do tables and chairs and cleanup and all of the various activities here. Really important for children to see that's important. We're jumping in on the work of God. And of course, as parents, we want to be very careful not to be planning activities that compete with the ecclesia. The ecclesia is important. It's a priority. We want to be at that event. We try to avoid anything that conflicts with the events of a special event with the ecclesia or any of the events with the ecclesia. I would say there's also an element here related to the ecclesia and its activities in our discussions around the dinner table. This is where, we're not trying to say the ecclesia is perfect. We have to be very careful that we are predominantly positive with our children and have a predominantly positive environment, but they need to understand the realities and they need to be engaged in the truth and the things which are going on. We're going to obviously keep the darkest and most difficult things from them, but this is an age where they need to start to engage. And some people would just try to protect their children and leave out first principle matters and things that are of concern to them through these years and into the next phase. And children then are not really engaged in understanding these issues and looking at the word and working through these matters. And so I gave you as an example, again, we're not going to read it here, but Nehemiah has some great references here. Nehemiah 10, 28 to 30, 39, and also this one in 1243 and others, where it talks about the engagement of the people, including the children. So in one section, it speaks about them separating themselves from the people of the lands unto the law of God, their wives, their sons, and their daughters, everyone having knowledge and having understanding. As soon as there's that knowledge and understanding, we want them to be participating and engaged. And it was to walk in God's law, which was given by Moses to the servant of God, to observe and do all the commandments of the Lord, our Lord, and his judgments and his statutes, and that we would not give our daughters unto the people of the land, nor take their daughters for our sons. So they're part of the dedication. They're part of the service. They're part of the provisions that are made for the house of God. We will not, it says, forsake the house of our God. The kids got to see the ecclesia is a focal point in their lives. And in verse 43 of chapter 12, they rejoice together, it says, the wives also and the children rejoiced. Well, let's go on to the next phase. And here we have the 13 to 12 group, and we talk about here wisdom and endurance. There's lots of choices to all of a sudden be made. And hopefully it's progressive and it's not overwhelming, but there are a lot of things now that sort of change in life as we enter into the teen period and grow through this particular period. And so it's also a period of trial and temptation. All of these things come into play in this period, and the groundwork that's been established in those first two phases is really important to help them there. So, potential partner. Now, we've already talked about this, just to put it In summation form, children should, we think, be adults before they're trying to pick a partner. We think they should get their relationship right with God first and his Son, and they'll be better positioned then to find, God willing, a sister in the truth or a brother in the truth as a partner to work together with. And of course, really what they're looking for is someone to help them get to the kingdom of God. We know all of the natural impulses here as adults that are going on with teenagers and young teenagers and all the way through that period. We offer for you the verse, Proverbs 31:30, favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. And if our children can at least say, that's a non-negotiable. I'm looking for someone who fears the Lord. There's other things that are going to be important, obviously, but they need to understand the importance of having someone that fears the Lord, because this person's going to be very influential ultimately in their lives. So it's talking it through. It's working through this period because it can be a period of testing and trial in itself. There can be heartbreak, pain, and sorrow. You know, the person that you like doesn't like you. And sometimes they've had situations where they've faced a breakup, and it's very, very difficult. And of course, there's temptations for women in the world or men in the world. So for parents, it's a time to, again, provide that steady influence of counsel and support. We feel the agony sometimes deeply for what our kids go through. In this respect, we have the example of the Lord and the example of the Apostle Paul, but it doesn't make it easy if things are not working out for a particular person, one of our sons or daughters. We got to somehow keep life positive and progress in the truth through the ups and downs and challenges, of course, lots of prayer. We also have education and occupation. We've already discussed this as well, related to the longer term. Wisdom in our choices are really important here, looking ahead, getting a job that's suitable. And I think it's even more challenging with what's going on in our world today to guide people in their decisions related to this, because the climate out there is changing and it's a wicked, wicked world. But we want to just make a few comments on the shorter term. One of the things that we looked at was that this period of time is unique, and we really want to prioritize Bible schools and youth camps, youth conferences, whatever it was that we felt would be a good influence and positively supportive of our children's upbringing. This is difficult because you do want them to learn how to work and the realities of life on this front. We kind of took the approach, and we're able to do that. It's not, maybe it's more challenging for some, but we tried to say, look, they're going to be working the rest of their lives. So we don't want them sacrificing, not getting to Bible school and not having those impactful spiritual events in their lives. So we commend to you Ephesians 5:16 in this respect, redeeming the time because the days are evil. And we also would say the days are short, because now in the teen years, you're starting to spend less time. They're getting more independent, and that time is precious. And looking back, you always felt you have more time, and the days fly fast. You want to buy the time and use it wisely. So I think, this is something that is worth a consideration here, to try to have those impactful things in their lives in summer times that can really help them as they progress. The other thing that we might just comment on is that we always felt it was best if the kids went to school locally, as in they could stay at home when they did so, going to college or university, or stay at other Christadelphians. We didn't see living at a campus or, in the world with other people of the world really as an option. We wanted to prioritize somehow and have them commit to being in a situation that was still spiritually strong and foundationally in the right direction. These periods of time are places where people are lost, these major transitions. And so we need to obviously prepare our children here in faith, and with prayer, of course, because now they're becoming independent, and we hope that wisdom is going to be there for us in our helping of them, and wisdom now taking root in them as they make decisions and work their way through life. The last one is temptation and trial, which we've commented on. 1 Corinthians 10:13, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to endure it. I think this is a big one because in the first two phases, they're very much handheld, shall we say, and they're very much there under the care of their parents. But now they're going to face more and more independent circumstances, and they're going to be faced with these types of things. And if not during that period of time, future periods of time will be when they face this, but you want to prepare them for this. Not everything's going to go right in life. There's going to be challenges. And if it's not related to some of these matters that we've discussed, it can be something else. It can be suffering for Christ's sake. It can be something in the truth. It can be standing up for what's right. It can be something that's maybe related to health. There's many things that could come up in our lives, and this is where we're talking it through, that we understand the roots of the truth and the foundation of these things are going to keep us steady through these times, because there's a lot of waves and challenges that could set us off course. And if they understand that, then I think that's helpful. Look, time is rolling by. This is Sunday school. And so I realize, when we started off, I have a grandchild taking up some of my time, and then, all these other young people, but that's really what it's about. So I'm going to have to be pretty brief here as I'm moving through the rest of this, as I see this clock here. And that's really convenient because I don't have the answers to these things. I'm just going to, I'm going to put these things out to you. But look, it has to do more with the modern parent. I'm not 1888, but I'm not dealing with some of the stuff that you have to deal with here. I mean, we're talking about, when does a kid get a phone, and how do you, utilize that? How do they get access to the internet? And how do you utilize that? Look, you can just keep everything away from them, and then they get out in the world, and then it's all there. That's not great. At the same time, you don't want to give it too early, and you want to do it in a way that is going to progress them, and they will mature and understand the right uses of these things and not get caught up in a wrong direction. I've talked to a few parents in the world, and one of the things, especially since COVID, they really are struggling with the kids having relationships, being social, being out, doing other things. I mean, they got kids that just go in the basement and they're on their computer, and they live their life in social media and in gaming and whatever they do in that screen. And parents have a hard time getting them out. We have wonderfully a structure with our ecclesial life and all that's going on that provides some wonderful things there. The parents in the world, in a lot of cases, are struggling that much more because they don't have that. So what happens when the young person meets a beautiful girl or a fun-loving, good-looking guy, and they're not godly? What's going to happen there? What happens when they're outside the house a lot more? They've got money, they've got transportation, they have means. These are all the things that are happening there, and these are things that we need to progressively work through here, hopefully on the foundation of the first two phases. And look, I don't want people to be, obviously getting worried about this. We do it in faith, and we do the best we can, as we said, with the guidance of the Word and in prayer. But there's a sense of urgency in those younger years to establish these things, to work forward in those other years. And sometimes it goes really well. But other times it doesn't go like you planned. And some of the kids, maybe it's going better for, and then others, the maturity is just, it's just not there. Even in the late teens, struggling with maybe a commitment to the truth and a decision around the truth. And so, for parents, it's patience and it's consistency, and it's hanging in there through those years and hoping at some point it's going to take hold. So, look, the 0 to 6 stage really, is a carefree period of time. It should be that. Kids should be enjoying a lot of fun. The 7 to 12 stage, really the same thing. There's some real life in there, but in that sense, our influence is very, very strong. In the 13-21 age, things can continue to be very strong and positive, and spiritual development can be good, but there can also be some trials and temptations. There's life-changing decisions in there, and it can be more challenging for us. In summary here, 0 to 6, love and truth. We start that there. We think those continue on through time. Holiness and service become really important in that second phase. It continues on through time. And then we have wisdom and endurance, things to really work through in this teen period. And again, it affects the rest of our lives. And of course, there's other ways of putting it and articulating this, but this is one way to look at it that hopefully is helpful as we recognize, even though this is a continuum, the need to progress through these various stages. Now, we had some questions here to deal with, and here's where I think the time is almost beyond us here, but we'll give it a go here real quick. Spanking is not working for us. Is it really necessary for every child? Well, there's spanking and there is spanking. And some people talk about spanking in different things, like a little slap on the hand. And I think they might do that a lot in some occasions, and it really doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. So if that's what we're talking about, maybe that's why it doesn't work. You can, hit children and spank them hard and not associate it with loving communication, and really make the use of talking through things with them before and or after as appropriate. And then there's kids who will yell and have temper tantrums. And in this case, I think it's not going to work because you can't have that. And so they need a double spank. They need to be humbled. In the end here, kids need to be humbled by this process. And we found with 3 of our 4 kids that they responded very quickly. Why did we not spank them sooner? Everything has just gone, really peaceful and nice, and they got it. They get it really quick. And sometimes we had one that would have these adverse reactions to us, and kind of fight back and squirm and do everything to get out of it. And so you had to have a talk that if you're going to do that, you're going to get it worse, because you have to win this. And so we do this in love. We tell them it's going to hurt us more than them. It does. We don't just say that. And we tell them, we want you to be good. We want you to be in the kingdom. And so we have to be committed to this and make it work. Okay, I'm going to skip through the next questions. You're not even going to see them. And we'll just head to a line of summary here as I see the kids gathering at the door. So in conclusion, again, the children are a real blessing and a joy and a pleasure. And even worldly parents, as we saw in our first session, enjoy children. They're satisfied with them in this life. But we have something greater in mind for our children. And that is an eternal purpose, godly children who are raised up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And so we desire them to be in the kingdom. Look, we don't look at them and say, I'm going to raise them because I want them to be my friends. That's not the focus. We want them to be God's servants. And the best relationship we can have ultimately is that they are our brother and our sister. That's amazing. If they happen to be our friends, great. That's a real possibility. But parents who are just seeking to be their friends right off the bat, there's something not right there. These children are children, and they need to be raised through these phases ultimately to the glory of God. And so we hope they will become independent people, loving God, committed to the Son, convicted in the Scriptures, praying and servicing the things that pertain to eternal things, the Ecclesia of God. They're a precious resource, and parents are intimately involved with this, but all of us, as we've said, have a role in supporting parents and the raising of these children. And may it be to God's glory and honor.
Don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment in the comments section and let us know what you thought. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Please share it and spread the word. Thanks for watching. And remember to come back soon.